there. Welcome to Hollywood Breakthrough. I'm your host, Danielle Tillis. Hi, this is Danielle. Welcome to Hollywood Breakthrough. Today we have a great guest on. We have Anne Lundgren. She's a film producer for the upcoming feature film, Black Road. Anne Lundgren, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for having me.
And just want to talk to you a little bit about how you got started. Let's dive in a little bit your background before we talk about the great feature film, Black Road, the Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, I started out of college. I got a job working for one of the very first email software companies. They provided some of the back-end email software to companies like Verizon and AT&T back in the early 90s. And it was a really small company. When I started, there were only 30 or 40 people there, and it grew to over 1,000 in a few years. So when I kind of moved up pretty quickly while I was there, and I became a project manager, which I love. I've always loved organizing things and facilitating groups of people, and that's what I did. And it was very, very similar to producing. So I'm thankful for that job. I got to work with a lot of really smart people all throughout the organization, sales and marketing and engineers, and really prepared me well for running a team of people now on our crew.
Now, how did you get into the film bug, though? What kind of happened? What was the transition from that?
Well, I actually always knew that I wanted to do film, and maybe not always, but I met my husband, Gary Lundgren, who I produced for in college, and we've been married 20 years now. And he wanted to make films, and he was an English major. I was a philosophy major. And I think the moment that I knew that that's what we would probably do for a very long time was, my sophomore year in college, and I was sitting in a theater watching a play that he had written, and I just remember being really moved and touched by the play and thinking it was really cool. I really like this guy. And I don't know, then we got married, and he went to film school for a year in Pasadena at the Art Center there. And after a year, we decided, let's put the money that we would have spent on film school, let's just put it into a feature. So we made a student feature. It was very similar budget to what we're doing now, and that one we put on credit cards and borrowed money from family. It was called Lithium, and we sold it to Showtime in Australia because it had an Australian actress in it, and it played there for 18 months.
Oh, wow.
But this was way back before you could get films on the internet, or we didn't really even know about the festival circuit or anything like that at that time.
So you didn't even go to any festival circuits at all? You just kind of did it by credit card, and you got picked up by Showtime?
We did, but we didn't. We had a friend who had a kind of a B-film distribution company. He helped us on the film. He was our AD and kind of a co-producer. And he was selling films overseas back then, so he did sell the film a little bit. We didn't make our money back on that film, but it was we were able to pay it off eventually. But it was really fun and a great experience, and we had the bug since then. And then after that, I kept working in the software company to pay the bills, and Gary was commuting to LA. We were living in Santa Barbara at the time. He was commuting to LA. He was doing assistant editing work and some directing for TV and all kinds of odd jobs. And all the while, we just kept making short films and music videos, and with always in mind that we would be making features. So we were pretty, set and focused and stubborn from the very beginning that that's what we wanted to do.
It's interesting because you say you have a background in philosophy. I actually have a background in philosophy as well. So it's kind of a strange thing to tell somebody like, hey, you have a philosophy background. Like, what does that exactly mean? But I definitely get it.
But when I didn't even know about it in high school. I think kids know about it now, but I didn't learn about philosophy till I got to college. I thought it was going to be like a science major first. Philosophy class was required, and I was like, oh, I have to do this. I thought that philosophy, a lot of students had double majors in philosophy. So either they would be an English major or a math major, and that was me. Like, I liked the logical side of philosophy. It was really similar to math, but it was more like life. You got to study the abstract qualities of life. I loved it.
Yeah, so do I. Now, the other feature film you did, not really feature film, you did a couple of shorts, but you also did a really great film that got a lot of press behind it, was the REDWOOD Highway. Mm-hmm. How was that kind of started?
That was the second. We made a feature called Calvin Marshall, which is a baseball comedy. We made that at the very end of 2007, and it was released in 2010 theatrically. And then after that, we moved up to Oregon, Ashland, Oregon, and here we met the main producer on REDWOOD Highway. He came to us with the story idea. He came to Gary, and he wanted to make a movie geared towards the senior audience. Mm-hmm. a more mature audience with a woman who was walking the Redwood Highway, which is a road in Oregon which goes from Grants Pass out to the coast. It's a really beautiful road, and it goes through the redwood. And so Gary wrote that for him. It was in July. And the whole movie, the process of making that movie only took 9 months from the moment that they sat down and had the first meeting to when we released it at a festival. That movie right now is still in theaters in some parts of the country. So it's been out for a couple months, and it just came out on VOD and DVD.
So what festival did you guys do when you did that film?
We premiered it at the Ashland Film Festival. When we did that film, we just thought that we were going to immediately, fall into our release plan. We didn't have a festival strategy for it so much because we'd missed some of the big festivals because we shot it in October, November. So we just decided, we'll finish the film and then we'll distribute it, we'll sell it. And that, when we got to April, the Ashland Film Festival wanted to show it, and we live here, so we did. And then we showed it to some other festivals, and then Monterey Media just put it out this spring.
Oh, wow. You said Calvin Marshall, so that's available right now on Netflix and iTunes and Amazon. So that was done prior to this, and how was that kind of started?
The Calvin Marshall was a script that Gary wrote. While we were finding our way in our career, he wrote a lot of screenplays, probably 10 screenplays. And this was one that, towards the end of that, when he learned a lot about writing, he wrote that. And then we, tried for several years to get it made. We did all of the things that people do, take it around to the agencies and other production companies. And then we tried to raise our own financing. And finally, we partnered up with some friends of ours who were also growing in their career. And we started a company in LA with them. And between all of us, we found the financing for it, a lot of private friends and family financing. And our main producer on that, Mark Cunningham, he helped with a lot of that stuff. And Mikey Matandi was the other producer on that film. So it took a good several years, and several times we put it together and it fell apart. One time we even had Steve Zahn cast in it, and we were just about a month away from shooting, and it didn't happen. And then we had to, I'm sorry, Daniel, for 1 second, I'm sorry. My daughter was asking for something.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. So we had Steve Zahn cast in it, and then the financing fell apart, and then we were able to put it back together 2 years later, and we still got him to come back and play the role of the coach in that film.
How difficult is it to be to be married to the screenwriter and producer of the film, and also to be a woman in this industry?
Those are really good questions. The first one about being married to the director. We've been doing this our whole marriage, and mostly it's been a great experience. We both have really different skill sets. Gary's very creative, and I am too, but I handle much more of the business aspects of it. And we both love working, so we work a lot at home, but then we're together all the time too. So we kind of shift back and forth pretty easily. And then being a woman in the industry, I think I was really lucky that my parents, I'm pretty fortunate. I don't know that very many women have this situation, that I didn't really even know that there were women's issues until I got into the workforce. So my parents, never let me think that there was anything I couldn't do. And then when I started it right out of college, I entered technology, which was at that time very similar to what it is now. It was a very young, very smart workforce. And I started working for some men who, they didn't make a difference between the men and women in the company. So I spent a good first 5 years of my career working for really great people, and I didn't run into some of the standard issues that you see until a little bit later, with some people in the film industry. And it did get a little bit harder, but mostly I just ignore that.
How do you pretty much, when you have some type of, setbacks, like the movie you made that was in Showtime in Australia, that you didn't make the money that you guys thought it would make? How do you get over that kind of obstacles where you thought you did all your work into this, you put a lot of money in your credit cards into it, and it did not, and you even get picked up by Showtime, but it did not give you the quick money return back, because you would think with going straight to Showtime, you think, oh my gosh, this is going to be huge for us. We'll get our money back right away. How hard was that?
Yeah, I don't know that we really expected to make a ton of money on that first one, because it was a little bit more of a student project to us, and we were just trying to figure it out. The only thing we knew about at that time, and this was 20 years ago, was Sundance. And we did try to get it into Sundance. And, now knowing what I know, that wasn't realistic. But at the time, that's really all we knew. And we submitted it. And I remember I was working at Starbucks, and Gary came in with the newspaper, and it had a list of the films that had been admitted to Sundance. And I know ours wasn't on there, of course. But that was the only way you could find out then was, he'd gone next door to the little, 7-Eleven or something and gotten a newspaper and come in. And so that was disheartening, because I think anytime any kids coming out of college just have this idea that, I'm going to be the one that makes it. I'm going to be the one that just, my career goes really fast. But we got some good advice in the beginning. Somebody told us, work hard for 10 years and then, you'll probably make it. And it was about that 10 to 15 years before we were able to really start seeing our career move forward in the way we wanted.
Now, speaking of your upcoming feature film, it's a really interesting background cast. It's called, the film is Black Road. You're doing Kickstarter campaign. Is this your first Kickstarter campaign with a film?
Yes, it is our first campaign.
Now, you guys are pretty close to your goal. So how difficult or how easy it was for you guys to kind of get the Kickstarter campaign going?
I think, we had a lot of confidence in it going into it, and we had a pretty good idea of what we needed to do, just from watching other campaigns over the last 3 years and watching friends' campaigns and contributing to campaigns. So we knew it needed to be done, but people say it's a full-time job, and, I work full-time anyways. We always are working. We love working, but it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I think for me, I'm a pretty private person. I'm quiet, introverted, and it's nonstop, 24/7, putting yourself out there, being social, asking people for money, and it's huge. It is so much work on just keeping a constant presence on Twitter and Facebook, and then also dealing with the emotional roller coaster of it, because even though our chart was tracking pretty good the whole time to successful campaigns, in the middle area, when you maybe are only getting 1 or 2 backers a day or a couple $100 a day, one day we didn't get any. And so just dealing with that stress and panic every day was really hard.
You should be really proud of
Yeah, thank you. Everybody gave us so much good feedback. I mean, they learned so much. And one thing I learned is that we have a lot of really amazing friends and network and people who have dipped in to help us get the word out and give money. And there's no haters in our network. So that's really nice to know, and it's annoyed anybody too much with all my postings. They've been excited to follow along. So that's a big learning for me, is just being willing to accept the help and realize that people really do want to get behind it.
And you guys are less than 10,000, less than 8,000 away from your goal. So we're going to definitely help push this out there to everyone. Talk a little bit more about Black Road. Okay, so it's set in 2049. He's a drifter. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. It's set in 2049. It's a sci-fi film noir movie. And it's set in the fictional state of Jefferson, which I don't know if the rest of the country knows that much, but there's a section of Northern California and Southern Oregon that for years, probably over 50 years, has been wanting to create their own state. And there's always discussion about it that comes up. Like right now, California, I think there's people who want to split California into 6 states. Well, so this is set in the state of Jefferson, and it's at a time when the nation has traded freedom for security. So it's become a big brother state. And you have territories that have started to secede from the Union, and it's a little bit more like the Wild West. They make their own rules and their own laws. So it's a bit of a dangerous territory. And our main character is coming into this territory. He's an ex-military experiment. He has a computer embedded in his head, so he's a bit of a cyborg. And the computer actually plays a character in the movie, and so they're having a conversation together throughout the movie. It's a little bit like a detective team, except one of the partners is actually in the other's head. And when Dylan gets there, he goes to the lawless state of Jefferson looking for work, and he's hired by a woman to protect her from her homicidal ex-husband who's trying to kill her for reasons that we find out. And then at that point, it does follow a lot of the lines of a standard film noir structure. You have the femme fatale and the money, dangerous.
And you have a pretty good cast, too. You have a good cast going there. You have, I believe, Sam Daly and Michelle Lombardo.
Michelle Lombardo been in other of our films, and they're on all kinds of other, television and work like that.
Talk a bit more about the film in Oregon.
Yeah, we're going to be we'll start on July 21st, so just in a couple weeks. We're in the middle of prep right now, too. And we start shooting for 4 weeks, all in Southern Oregon. And we've shot both of our last 2 movies in Southern Oregon. So one thing that we've been working on is this idea of regional filmmaking, and that because of technology and because of our customers, you can really make films from anywhere. And so, movies are moving outside of Hollywood the same way that tech companies have moved outside of Silicon Valley and springing up everywhere. So that's one thing that we've really been focused on here in Southern Oregon. And as I've been working with the angel investors in this area, we've been promoting the idea of regional film growth and growth for the economy through the film industry. And that's really hit a chord with a lot of the investors I've been talking to here. So we're going to be continuing that conversation for our next films too.
How's the tax credit out there? Did you guys take advantage of the tax credit out there for filming?
Yeah, we've used them. We use them on everyone. So it's a tax how does that work? It's a tax credit. At the end of filming, we submit all of our expenses, and then we get back between 15 and 20% of what we spent in Oregon. And it's only the money that we spent in Oregon that we get back.
And some of the great Kickstarter rewards you guys got here for people to contribute from the lowest $10 to $15 to high as $10,000 to $7,500. So there's a whole lot of different range, but some of the great things you guys are offering to a lot of people are just a DVD and screenplay, a 1 mile marker sponsor for the 500 level, also for the $2,000 level. You can actually be a co-producer for this film. So these are some great ticket items for people to actually purchase for the Kickstarter rewards.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of great rewards left. Actually, all of our associate producer and co-producer credits are all gone now, but we still have one executive producer credit, but that is at the $10,000 level. And then we have in association with, so if a company wants to put their production company name on it, that's $7,500. And then we're selling a couple logos at the beginning of the film. So it's almost like in association with, except that you would have your logo in the opening sequence of the film, the very beginning of the film, for $3,000. And then, of course, we have all the lower levels. The one thing that we've done is really fun is we created a thank you website, and it's a road. Have you seen that? You have your logo on there, actually. It's a motorcycle going down a road, and there's yellow stripes along the road, and every one of our backers has their name on one of those stripes.
Oh, wow, that's great. I remember hearing you guys went green. So the motorcycles that's in this film is electric motorcycles. Is that correct?
That's right. There's a very large electric motorcycle company that's headquartered here in the Rogue Valley, and their name is Bramo. It's Bramo Electric Motorcycles, and they're 100% electric. And the company is really growing fast. It's a locally grown company started by their CEO, Craig Bramsher, and they have agreed to let us use one of their motorcycles in the filming. Pretty excited about that. Beautiful bike. Yeah,
I saw pictures of them. They're very beautiful bikes, very colorful. And which is always really nice for a great motorcycle to be colorful and fast. So have you written one yet?
No, I haven't. I want to, though. I don't know if I'll get a chance to. Probably not. But,
do you know how to ride a motorcycle?
I have before, but it's been a really long time. Okay. I would have to get a little bit of training. But Sam Daly, he actually got training on a motorcycle last summer when we first were talking about putting this movie together. He's done his training, so he's excited. Yeah. And
Sam Daly, the actor in the actual film that's coming up, he has a background with I guess his family generation of actors. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Tim Daly is his father, who is on Wings, and they do a show together right now called The Daily Show, and they've both been in several television shows lately too. I think Tim's in Hot in Cleveland, and Sam also was in an episode of that. And then Tyne Daly is his aunt, and his mom, Amy Van Nostrand.
He also been in a couple like the Red Tails, Submerged, The Education of Charlie Branks. So he's been in a lot of different things.
Credits. He has over 30 credits. Yeah.
And Michelle Lombardo, she's definitely has been doing things as well. Entourage, Californication, Mad Men. So she's been in a couple of things as well. People can recognize her films leaded. They can definitely recognize both of these actors in this film.
Right. And we have two other, Michelle plays a friend of Sam's in the movie, and she has a really nice part. But the older woman in the movie, the Femme Fatale woman, who will be Sam's love interest for the movie, and also the villain, her ex-husband, those parts right now we have offers out to cast. So I can't speak about who they are, but they'll be, recognizable names as well. So those 4 actors will be bringing that from LA, and then all the other ones will be casting here in Southern Oregon. We're really lucky to have the Oregon Shakespeare Festival here, which is one of in the top 3 Shakespeare festivals in the United States, is right here where we live. So we've been able to use a lot of those actors over the years.
Oh, wow. That's great. I know you're very nervous, very excited as well. So you kind of juggle everything. Your mom, you're a wife, you're a producer. I'm got to be very difficult to do that. How old are your kids?
I have one daughter. We have one daughter who's 8, and she's finally getting to that age where she can do a lot by herself. But that also means that I maybe ignore her a little bit more than I should, especially when I get in the middle of all these things. What we say is that I don't feel too guilty though, for a couple of reasons. One is when I'm working really hard and really focused, but then when I'm not, I'm with her all the time. And so it's pretty intense one way or the other. So she does get a lot of time with us. And then my parents are close by and they watch her when we're in the middle of production. But now she's to the age now where she can really start to find some interest in what we're doing and even help out a little bit. And the other reason I don't feel too guilty about it is that I just love the fact that she gets to see us do something that we love. And also she sees us, stumble and fall and fail and have a hard time a lot too, but still, get back up and be resilient and keep going. And we do talk to her about that a lot. Just like we certainly don't expect her to want to work in the film industry necessarily. And I want her to do whatever it is she thinks is important to her. But I think just being able to set an example to her as going after something and pursuing a passion and adapting and changing and no matter how hard it is really is great.
And your film production company is called Joma Films? Mm-hmm. So it's jomafilms.com, is that correct?
Right, jomafilms.com. And that Joma actually stands for something in our family. It's my grandmother, May, so the first two initials of her name, M-A, and Gary's grandfather, Joy. His first name was Joy. And so Joma, and they were both really important, inspirational people in our lives. So that's where we got our company name from.
Wow, that's great. That is really great. And Kickstarter campaign is going to be coming up soon to the end, but we're going to be pushing this film out. We definitely want people to donate, to definitely take advantage of some of these great rewards you get from different levels for anyone can buy. The movie seems going to be very interesting. It's going to be different. I'm looking forward to it. And I noticed you said I read something about a little bit of Alfred Hitchcock, sort of. So how does that play in a factor there?
Oh, I think Gary wrote something about that. He's always been a huge Hitchcock fan. So, let's see. So some of the things he's been inspired by in this movie, Hitchcock, just for the subtle way he, creates really scary, moody scenes in a film. And then he's always been a huge Lynch fan. And then he's read a lot of Jim Thompson books, which are all, they follow film noir structures. But it's gonna, we've done two dramas before this, but this is a genre film, and we've been excited to do more of a genre film for a while. But it's still going to have some really human elements to it. Gary loves to write about meaningful characters. So even though it's a plot-driven story, the characters are going to still be really rich and human.
Are you still, being a producer, are you still doing these somewhat stumbling blocks, a learning curve with this? Where you think in the curve of learning here? Are you kind of like, okay, I'm learning so much more? Or?
Yeah, Joma Films is also a commercial production company, so we do a lot of commercials throughout the year, and that pays our bills. And, features don't exactly pay the bills, but we do them because we love them, and we'll keep doing them. So the actual production work, we've gotten where we feel pretty comfortable with it now, and it is juggling a lot of pieces, but we at least know what needs to get done, and when those surprises come up, we're able to handle them usually. The parts that I've really been learning a lot about over the last 2 years are the financing and the distribution pieces. So those have been huge learning curves for me, and I'm still in the middle of that process. And we can talk about either one of those if you'd like.
Yes, we definitely do. What explain that a little bit to me. Okay.
Well, for the financing, I think that has been my biggest learning, and I'm a quiet person. I don't like to go out and ask for money. I don't like to ask for help even sometimes. But at one point I realized that, I really love my team. I love my crew. What if I could see my investors as part of my team, and I could, help them get what they need as being part of that team? And that was an exciting moment for me. So once I made that decision and had that realization, but then it still took me another 2 years to get to, and it was about 2 years ago. And what I did was I decided that instead of trying to go find film producers, film financiers, I would look at other businesses and I would look at angel investors who traditionally invest in technology companies and other things like that. So in Southern Oregon, they have a really great angel network and business training program. And I started going to all of those networking events and meeting investors. It was really scary at first. I just thought, oh, they're going to think I'm don't know what I'm doing. But the opposite was actually true. All they want is to see new businesses grow and get good and contribute to the local economy. And so once I figured that out, I started getting a lot braver. And a lot of them came alongside me and became my mentors. And what they did was they helped me put together a business plan that really made sense from an angel investor perspective. And, a lot of times they're looking for things like 10 times return. Mm-hmm. And, in the indie film world, we know that, okay, well, maybe in 0.5% of the cases that happens, and it's certainly a possibility, but the truth is that 95% of the films aren't making any money. So we had to work really hard to get to a business plan that made sense to them. And once we finally did, and it took me about 2 years of working really closely with them, then it all started making sense. And, we raised some of our money from investors for this movie, and then the other portion we're getting on Kickstarter. And that's been exciting too, because then there's a whole nother team of people we've been able to open up to. So now we have 300 people on our team who are also really excited and supportive of the project and are going to get to see what happens. And the whole process just gets a little, more transparent to everybody and fun.
You decided to leave LA, leave that area. How difficult was that? Because a lot of people think they should pack up and go to LA to start a film or go to New York. And you did something a little bit different. You left and decided to do the film in another city, another state. Yeah,
we've always had kind of one foot in LA and one foot out. And we've said along the way, like, gosh, if we would have just committed to being in LA 20 years ago, then we would have all the networks now that we need to do the work there. But for some reason, that just never really worked for us. I came from the country, and Gary lived in San Francisco, but I didn't love living in the city. I love parts of LA, and I love the community and the friends that we made there and the access to art and culture and all of that. But I didn't love living in the city. So we would kind of move in and out, and I don't know how good that was for our career, but we finally just decided that our daughter was going into preschool. So that was really what did it for us. We just said, you know what, my family lives near Ashland. Let's go to Ashland. We know that there's not a lot of work there, but how about we initiate our own work there and we bring work in from the outside? And that's what we've done. It's taken us 3 or 4 years, but we came here with that intention that we would start growing the industry here. And there were already some people here that had that also in mind. So we've been able to partner with them. And over the last 2 or 3 years, the industry really has grown here. In fact, Movie Maker magazine just named Ashland the number 2 town to live and work as a movie maker.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's certain, and there's a ton of work being done in Portland, which is about 4 hours from here, and they send as much work our way as they can. So they'll encourage productions, the smaller productions, to come down and shoot in Ashland and the Rogue Valley in Southern Oregon.
Well, one thing I wanted to make sure we kind of touch on is that what gets you through everything? Are you inspired by a quote? Are you inspired by anything that gets you kind of moving, that you have maybe an obstacle that happens and you just kind of, what do you do to kind of keep going forward? Because in the industry, there's writers, there's film writers, there's directors, there's screenwriters. Mm-hmm. They have these, stumbling blocks. And what kind of keeps you going forward and saying, we got to keep going with this?
Yeah, it's hard to know if there's any one thing, because certainly over the years, we had a lot of moments where we wanted to give up and just thought like, we should do something different. But for us, it was always like, well, what will we do differently? Really, what else could we do? What would we do? And there was nothing else that really made sense. Even when I was in that software job, I was good at the work and I was rewarded by it, but I never wanted to be doing that. I knew I didn't want to be working for somebody else, and I wanted to own my own business and pave our own way. And Gary is always so creative and he's a true artist. He can't not be creating work or he's not happy. So we would just see in both of ourselves that whenever we weren't pursuing film and pursuing our passions, no matter how hard it was and how discouraging and how depressing at times because we weren't getting where we wanted to, we were unhappier when we weren't doing it. I think we just always have known that. And since I was a little girl, I have such a strong sense that I really hope for people that they can do their dreams or their passions or just keep trying in life. And this is one thing I'm thinking about a lot because my daughter is 8. And I see a lot of artists and a lot of friends even who maybe around the age of 28 to 35 or so, when they're thinking about a family and settling down, they had a lot of ambition, but then they let it go at that point. And then it becomes too late. Or maybe it's never too late, but it gets harder because you get into other things and then you haven't maybe been practicing your craft as much. So I feel like the harder we work and the more we put ourselves out there, when the opportunity comes, hopefully we'll be ready. But one thing I've been thinking about with kids is that I think that artists have to be entrepreneurs. And if you're an artist, you're running your own business, no matter what. That's the way it is. Even if for 20 years, for 15 years, I wanted to see it differently. But then finally I realized, no, I'm running my own business. I'm an entrepreneur. I need to know how to do this. So I would love to see kids getting entrepreneurial skills, especially where we live. They are really good at nurturing kids and their dreams and passions, but not as good at giving them the skills they need to build a life around those passions. So that's one thing that is a passion of mine. I really want to contribute to kids learning, especially kids who have dreams and passions to be artists, learning how to put business skills around that and learn it early when they're, in grade school and in junior high and high school. That's
very important because, being an artist and then having a mindset of making sure that you're able to do other things like pay the bills, things like that. It's very hard to do because you want to give everything to your craft. But then the reality hits, I got to pay for rent, got to do these things as well. Mm-hmm. So having that balance, it seems like you guys did a very good job at being married, having that balance, and then be able to kind of inspire other people to do the same thing, because it's definitely inspiring listening to you and your story, how you got started, because no one really taught you anything. You just kind of went for it. And that's really inspiring, I think. Just did it.
Really it hasn't been easy at all, and we could tell you a lot of stories about things that have happened, with all kinds of different things. But it hasn't been easy, but we're both pretty stubborn, I guess, in that way, that we just keep going somehow. And even now, it's definitely not easy. We're running a Kickstarter campaign. Ideally, we wish that we would have been able to get all the money from investors, but not really. I'm actually really glad that we're doing it this way now. It's been a very positive experience.
And I think that's how we're going to end it, because we want to tell people, definitely back this film, give them some money, go to Kickstarter. I'm definitely going to be tweeting this a little bit as well, put it on YouTube as well. What's your Twitter handler?
Joma Films.
Okay.
Joma Films. Mm-hmm.
And we have Black Road. It's a feature film. Kickstarter campaign is coming up to an end. We got to make sure that we support this film, support indie film. It's a great cause, and this film is going to be a great film once it's completed. So I want to say thank you for coming on the show. Definitely learned a lot. It's just amazing how your life transitioned to what you're doing right now. And we wish you all the luck, and we're definitely going to be backing you. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danielle. It was a really, really fun conversation. Thank you.